How's everybody? Come on in. Water's fine. Good to see you. I'm going to start in just a minute. I'm sitting in my car in Charlotte, North Carolina. I've been driving all day, but I'm faithful. Pastor Ward, you saying something? I see your mouth moving.
Yeah, I said our daughter lives in Charlotte.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she graduated from Belmont Abbey College there, so she lives in Charlotte, yes.
Wow. Okay. Well, I'm too tired to go see her tonight. How's everybody else?
Doing well, thank you.
Good. I was determined to get on, even though I'm on my phone, and the sun might be behind me a little bit, so hopefully it ain't too bad. You can make out how bedraggled and tired I am driving from 8:30 this morning to about 3 minutes ago. Ran in, got my wife in, took her food. I think she's good. She don't even need to see me no more now. Or we give a couple minutes for a few more people to get on, and then we'll start.
Bishop, I can't hear you, so I'm not sure if you're saying something to us.
Let me fix it. All right, how's that? Is that better? Oh.
Yes, Bishop, we can hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Great.
Yes.
Great. You know this.
Now I can't hear you. You muted yourself.
How about now?
Now I can hear you.
All right. Tell me if it goes out, because I don't know what it's doing.
Okay.
But welcome everybody. Glad you're on. I've been driving all day, but I'm faithful. So here I am on the phone in the parking lot of the hotel. We just want to touch base tonight. I think we have a short agenda, but I wanted to be on because I want to be faithful. Katie, you have that timeline. I see it. I'll see if I can see it.
Are you able to see the agenda on the PowerPoint, Bishop?
Bishop, we can't hear you.
All right, how about now?
Okay.
I don't know why it keeps doing that.
You may have to cut off your video so that the feed will be stronger.
Yeah. It looked like maybe I had unmuted at the right spot. Let's see what happened. Thank you for trying to help me. You're so kind. So help that guy out. Katie, do you have the timeline? Can you pull that up? There we go.
Do I have this? We have the meeting agenda here, and then the timeline's actually at the end of Tamika's presentation.
Okay, I'll hold that then. Let's hold that, and I'll let Tamika do it. But let's have a review of the GARE logic model. Tamika's gonna do that tonight. Tamika's in your hand.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you, Bishop.
You're welcome.
So Katie, we can go to the next slide. So wanted to talk a little bit about what is a racial equity tool. And before I get into what is a racial equity tool, I wanted to just give you all a sense of where the mayor was and where his cabinet was when we designed the task force. So this is a lot different than most task force. So we did not give you guys things and say, here, look at this and go through and tell us what you want to change. The mayor was very explicit to his cabinet saying that he wanted the community to bring forth changes where they felt that we needed to start with removing systemic racism in our policies and procedures throughout the city. And so that is why we did not deliver you with things of saying like, look at this particular issue. We asked you to choose from whatever. I mean, there's an array of things that the Criminal Justice Subcommittee could have looked at, but they chose to look at police, and that is what they're going to make recommendations on from what we've looked at thus far. So I'm saying that to say is that the city did not want to impose our own views on what needed to be changed. We wanted the community to tell us what you all wanted to have changed. Hence, this is a community racial equity and social justice task force. So this meeting is just to provide you with a little bit of assistance in providing the recommendations to the mayor and city council. So the city belongs to the Government Alliance on Racial Equity, and they have provided us with a racial equity tool. I believe Katie and Mariah have shared some documents with you previously in the beginning, and you probably thought, what are they sharing this for? But we thought that you guys would read through it and think about different ways to come up with recommendations and goals and different things of ways to tell the city how you would like to have different policies changed. So the racial equity tool is designed to integrate explicit consideration of racial equity in decisions, simultaneously a product and a process. And it identifies clear goals and measurable outcomes, engages the community in design making, and identifies who will benefit or be burdened by a given decision, examines potential unintended consequences, and develops implementation and evaluation mechanisms. You can go to the next slide, Katie. So why are we discussing this? So the Q1 and Q2 subcommittee reports followed a very simple research format. The Q3 subcommittee report will follow the format adapted by following the GARE recommendations. And I believe Mariah sent out some reading materials for you all, if you could read them over the next couple of months so that you all can make the final task force report. This is a reminder that the executive committee's sole responsibility is to form the final task force report. So the subcommittees are providing Q1 and Q2 subcommittee reports and Q3 subcommittee reports to you all, but it is your task to come up with how you all are going to provide recommendations to the mayor and city council. And the GARE model allows us to utilize best practices in formulating recommendations. Next slide. So this is just basic knowledge. So, and in the words of Bishop, I am not going to insult you, but you all know what the proposal is, the best results-based accountability. We're going to be beginning with a focus on a desired end condition. And we want to make sure that our outcomes are at a jurisdictional department or a program level. And there are different ways that I know that different subcommittees have asked, well, what exactly are we supposed to be doing? But that is the sole purpose of this task force. What does the committee feel that the city should be doing? That is where we are. What do you as the community feel that the city should be doing to remove systemic racism, remove barriers to provide equity within our city? Next slide. So we know that the day you guys, I've been copied on all of your emails, and I know that you guys are looking at a lot of data And so I think you guys, when you're looking at the different subcommittee reports going through, it would be beneficial to look to see and answer these questions to help you make meaningful decisions as we go through for you all to make the final recommendations to the mayor and city council. Next slide. And community engagement. How have communities been engaged? And I think that with this, we thought by engaging as many people from different facets of life into the subcommittees, this would bring a very robust report to the city. And so we think that we've done that, but if there's different ways that you think in the next coming months that we should engage the community with communication surveys or different things, then I encourage you all to make those recommendations to us so that we can get that information out to the community more than what we've already done. Next slide. And analysis and strategy. So who will benefit or who will be burdened by our proposals? So one thing that I know that I've stated to the chairs and co-chairs is that we are literally kind of talking to ourselves. It's almost like we're preaching to the choir. There may be heated conversations in the subcommittees, or maybe they're not. You know, it's like, okay, this is the things that we want to change. But we have to understand that when we make those changes, we're not going to be met with completely open arms. For instance, the city had the source of income and pay to stay legislation, which is a very equitable piece of legislation, but people did not see it that way. Not everyone saw it as equitable because it wasn't truly race. It was more economic, but if you look at it, structural racism is economics. I mean, slavery was built on an economic premise. So we have to remember those things. Racial inequities are perpetuated through systems and structures, and it is important to think about complementary approaches within your proposal. So as we are taking things away from people, we might want to think about how we can ease it just a little bit before certain people that we think are in our corner may not necessarily be in our corner. So we need to think about that when we're making the recommendations. Next slide. And implementation. So the city will look to the recommendations and see if it fits into our plan to be implemented. And but I think we need to look at it. Is it realistic? And does the city have the adequate amount of funding to implement the changes that you all are recommending? It might be a good thing to put in the recommendations like this. In order for this to be a successful strategy, you're going to need to invest this amount of money. That would be something that would be very helpful to the city and city council. Communicate about your racial equity proposal is important. I think even though we are meeting on a regular basis, it might be really good to talk to your friends and families about different things that you have read in the Q1, Q2, and Q3 subcommittee reports, because we're going to need help to advocate for the changes that you are considering to make. Next slide. And so the barriers to successful implementation are the skills gap, right? So we might not have all of the skills available within the city to reach the levels that you guys are recommending for us to implement. Lack of support from leadership. I don't think we're going to have that with this mayor in particular, but we have to be mindful of those that are on city council. And they are very, this is different wards, and everything may look, like this is something that is just and right. But, there are different people in different wards that may not like what we're proposing. We have to just understand that everyone's not going to be, this is not going to be a kumbaya report. And I just want to level set with everyone about that. The tool could be used in isolation, and we don't want to do that. And resistance to change, lack of support for change. certain people may like the way things are going right now. And so they may have a resistance. They're saying that there's no need for change. Why are we doing all of this equity work right now? It doesn't make any sense. So those things that could be a conversation. You know, we talk to our friends. We usually talk to people that think like us. We don't talk to people that don't think like us because we don't like to argue. So we need to think about that as we're making these recommendations. And then the perfectionist mindset. Perfect can be the enemy of the good. So we need to get to a middle ground sometimes and take baby steps. And so that's why I continuously have spoken about what would you like to do in year 1? What would you like to do in year 3, 2 to 3 years, and then from 3 to 5 years. So taking baby steps in the implementations would help the community move along to a more equitable place for all of us to live, work, and play together. Next slide. And so this is the GARE logic model, and I know that Katie has the actual PDF, and this can help you all as you are thinking about different ways to recommend what should be the first recommendation in each different subcommittee report, and they're going on forward. And this will be also very good for the communications subcommittee to help each of the other subcommittees figure out how they want to talk about their different recommendations going forward and how to communicate that to the public. Next slide. So Katie, I'm gonna turn it over to you for this piece about the deadlines.
Of course. Thank you. So these are reminders for subcommittee chairpersons. The July Q2 report. The Q2 report is due on July 1st. These are headings that Bishop has asked for all of the subcommittee chairs to utilize. There's an optional heading for the July report if committees have identified additional historical context since the end of Q1. There is an optional section 2. If you have not identified additional historical context since the end of the first quarter, you can feel free to omit that section. One difference between the Q2 report and the Q1 report is that the Q2 report requires literature review and research review. This does not need to be of the caliber, length, or intensity that someone might have utilized when they were doing a doctoral thesis. And I'll stop talking here because I'm sure Bishop will discuss his desire for support. This came from Bishop's desire to have a lot of substantive data supporting all the recommendations from the subcommittees. And then policy recommendations are expected in the Q2 report. They don't have to be final recommendations. Those final recommendations would be in Q3, and then a conclusion. So the request was just that these headings be utilized. If you have any questions, please feel free to let us know. If you need additional assistance, please let us know. I know that both Mariah and myself have articulated to individual co-chairs kind of some of the deadlines for requesting additional research. And so I'll defer to my previous conversations with the chairs that I help, and I'm sure Mariah will reach out to those who she helps as well. I know she has already, actually. And so the final report for the subcommittees is due on October 1st. So just to clarify that's the final deadline for the Q3 report. It's October the 1st at 5 p.m. These are the headlines, or these are the headings for the Q3 report. And all of these were taken directly from the GARE logic model. If for those of you who've had an opportunity to review the PDF that Mariah sent out earlier, you may recognize the color-coded arrows. There's a bar system that explains how you should utilize and best practices for utilizing data collection. We've been referencing the GARE model this entire time. We just simplified it for the Q1 and Q2 reports. And then just finally, a note for the final subcommittee report, the body text under this data and community engagement section is supposed to include documents, conversations, interviews, other items providing facts, statistics, etc. And this is of course, this is a screenshot from the 2021 subcommittee work plan. So that I think is sufficient to explain some of the administrative aspects. So I will hand it back over to Tamika if you'd like to say anything else. Thank you so much.
No, I'm good with this slide. Bishop, did you want to add anything to this?
Yeah, let me just add that the executive committee, the task force, those who are a part of the task force, most of us are a part of subcommittees, but some of us are not. But what we're going to be doing is sending out some kind of a survey so that the task force can then be able to make the final recommendation. So subcommittees are making recommendations. We really need that. We appreciate that. But then we're going to need to be making some final recommendations, and that really is in the purview of the executive committee. So we'll be working on that. We'll try to send something out, get your feedback on that. So it's really important. I think that's all I got.
We have 2 more slides, I think, Bishop.
Okay.
So as Bishop has said that we are going to be creating a survey monkey to figure out how to tabulate your votes for the final recommendations. And I don't know how many of you follow the state budget, but within that state budget this year, they are saying that the I guess it's the allowance of public meetings to be virtual will be removed for July. The city of Akron actually has a charter amendment that allows for virtual meetings. So our law department is looking to see if that is something that will help us with that. However, we will be holding an in-person meeting in August at the Well so that we can discuss the Q2 reports in depth. And that way we can start to utilize the Survey Monkey to help the subcommittees decide, fully flesh out their recommendations. And that therefore you all can provide feedback to the subcommittees before they make the Q3 report. Does anyone have any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Next slide.
No surprise.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for that GAR presentation that you did. I was quickly reading through it. And Tamika, I think you said something about racial demographics or things like that for the city are available. I think I read in there. And so my question is, since similar questions are going to be asked and answered from the subcommittees, like the racial demographics of the city, would it be expedient to have those sent to all of the subcommittees so that each one of us and our work groups aren't asking for the same information?
Sure, we can get that to you. I can say that I can get it. Katie or Mariah can send it to you by Thursday.
Okay, thank you.
We will pull that
I
up.
appreciate it. My second question, there was one point in there to say, is your plan realistic or adequately funded? And I think in our last co-chair meeting, Vince Curry asked a little bit about the budget and if one would be established. And I know that there was going to be some research into that. So my question is, how do we know if the plan can be funded if we don't know if a budget is in place?
So,
thank you.
You're welcome. So I am going to go back and ask the mayor how he would like the question to be answered, because I know for a fact that some of the changes that were made did not require funding, and some of the changes that are being recommended do require funding, and we do have American Rescue Plan Act dollars, right? So those are some of the things that we may be able to utilize in the coming years. And then also we will just have to, it being that it is a priority, the mayor will allocate the appropriate funds, but I think knowing what you all think it would take to implement appropriately would be helpful, right? So that would be helpful to know.
Okay. Yeah, and I think, thank you, Tamika, and in line with what you're saying, maybe like an approximate, since we don't know, are we talking $1 million, $2 million over a couple of years? Are we talking 500,000? I think maybe just like a ballpark might be helpful as we start approaching some of our final recommendations.
So I can give you our like what our annual budget is now, like what we work with currently. However, that is tenuous just because of some of the legislation that is going through that is going to impact our municipal income tax. So our dollars coming into the city will be fluctuating. In addition to that, I think I sent it to Mariah, our American Rescue Act plan dollars. Mariah, I think I sent it to you.
I have it, and it was distributed to the housing subcommittees, but I'm happy to distribute it to the group at large as well.
Yeah. Katie, if you could send that, then you will know how much money the city is receiving from the American Rescue Act, and how the mayor has decided to separate those funds in different buckets. And housing is there, recreation is there, public safety. So there's different areas. Youth violence prevention is one of the buckets. So there are different buckets where the mayor has decided to infuse several $million into these areas. And so that should be able to assist some of you.
And Tamika, if you don't mind, just to be fair, I think when Vince was talking, and I don't see him on the call, but so I don't want to speak for him, but I'm going to. Relative to the housing subcommittee, I think we're in a slightly different situation because we know that the city does get an allocation of CDBG funds, and that they also get home funds, and that some of the American Rescue Act funds were geared towards housing. So I think relative to his question and the information that we received in the housing subcommittee was really geared towards, how many federal funds are towards redevelopment and housing. So I'm trying to help you out, Tamika, with that his question was mostly about the housing subcommittee.
Thank you. And so with answering Vince's question, I think I know that you all sent over some questions earlier this week for clarification, and if there's additional funding questions about the federal dollars that we have, then if you could send those questions directly to Katie, and I can have Helen Tomic provide us with that actual how much federal dollars we get for that. And
well, if I can say something real quick, Tamika. So thank you, Ms. Teresa. But I think we need to speak to the uniqueness of the American Rescue Plan Act. So that is $153 million that's essentially unrestricted. So we as a Racial Equity and Social Justice Task Force, while the mayor has a vision for those dollars and they'll surely flow in no directions, I think we have a special opportunity to inform how those dollars are spent because it's not set in stone, right? Each municipality can direct those funds to whatever they believe necessary. And so if anything, I think it should birth a sense of urgency in all of us because I know that allocation process has already begun, but it's not yet finished. And so if we believe like there are dollars that need to be spent to rectify systemic racism in the city of Akron, I think we can readily make those recommendations
to see what happens. So hopefully that kind of sort of answers your question, Ms. Carla, but there are dollars that can be spent in a variety of ways. So.
Okay, that's good to know. One of the things that Vince was asking at that meeting was, would it be possible for our subcommittees to maybe prioritize what might have a big ticket, what might be a big ticket item? In other words, he said, when we start making these recommendations, to note, that this may come at some cost, but what we may not know is how much it might be. That's the $1 million question on our end. Like, for instance, for the communications subcommittee, we already know what one of our recommendations will be. So if we say we have this particular recommendation is for a plan to be implemented over a 5-year period, we might not know how much that cost. So should our subcommittee do some research, or should we just make the recommendation and say, look, we recommend that you put this plan in place, roll it out, over 5 years, and then let the city determine how much it might cost to, say, effectively do a communications plan?
No, Sister Carla, we want you to do some research. Go ahead and take a ballpark guess, because what we're going to do is give them our best guesstimate and let the city determine how they want to deal with that. So let's give them some guidelines, a range of what we think it might cost, even though that's going to be very difficult. Let's try to do that.
Okay.
So this is Teresa. What I was going to add, sort of, I guess, piggybacking a little bit off of what Carla was saying, when the recommendations come down from the subcommittees, and if I haven't had a chance to look at, read through the GAR attachments and all of that in detail, but I will. But when I sort of look at, some of the conversation about, this isn't going to be a kumbaya moment, I mean, the city and running government is just, layers of complexity, many of which we don't understand. So from the decisions that we make feel a little bit more high level, but I almost think about when you're looking at updating, your board's bylaws, amending the bylaws. Generally, there's, you're able to see what they said, and then you're able to see, you can then adjust the language to what you really want the new direction to be. And so when we look at, like you were saying, Tamika, that, there's decisions that would be made that possibly could create additional barriers that we may not know of. And so I guess I'm just sort of wondering, when the subcommittees submit their final report, will that final report give us enough direction to say, here's, how do we know for sure that we're moving the needle on systemic racism in a particular category for the city of Akron? And it'll take a while to even test that, to see if that has happened and if it's sustainable, not only with dollars, but with, new approaches to that, policy or whatever it is. So my mind just keeps going back to, again, when you're looking at bylaws, you sort of at least have a starting point to say, here's exactly what the language says now. And then we would have a better sense that are the recommendations, do we believe that would create additional barriers for people, or would that be really good for the bulk of the population, So I don't know. Do you have any thoughts about that with the final reports that you guys are expecting from the subcommittees?
So I think that's why Curtis recommended that we all meet in person to review the Q2 reports, so that we could, after you all have read over the GARE toolkit, then that way we can start to ask those questions and provide that feedback to the subcommittees to go back and think about what their recommendations are doing and seeing if there is if there are roadblocks. I can say that, for instance, the housing subcommittee and the criminal justice subcommittee, I know for a fact, have looked at different laws, and they are looking, they have what they want to change. So they know And it should have been in, I believe, I mean, the last time I read the quarter one report was when it was released. So, but I think that they looked at it and they said, you know, this is what we want to do. And so they have that base. And so the base should be in the report, and what we're going to, what they're recommending to change is there. So I think that in terms of comparing it to the bylaws, I think that some things are unwritten. For instance, the Criminal Justice Subcommittee realized that certain things were not written. It was just the way that the city did things. And so, but uncovering those things are very good too. And then they've done a lot of research. So I think that comes into play too. And so that will give you an opportunity to ask the chairs and the co-chairs in person at the August meeting about what, if you feel uncertainty about making a certain recommendation or pushing for a certain recommendation at a certain time. Does that help, Teresa?
And if I could piggyback real quick, so the impetus behind my desire to meet in person is the necessity for feedback from the task force to the co-chairs and subcommittees. It's incumbent upon us to nitpick the quarterly reports as much as possible, because ultimately we will make the final recommendations, and they, I hope, are tangible. The subcommittees are hard at work, but if we are not challenging them or applauding them for their efforts, and they're not giving any feedback, then, you know, this all becomes futile. So I'm looking forward to the opportunity where we can dialogue, I think, in a more intimate way, so that we can get to where we want to go.
Mr. Chair, I do see that Miss Judy Hill has her hand raised.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to make a comment. I've shared the first quarter report with quite a few of my members, and they're pleased with the work and pleased to see that the breadth of what we're trying to tackle. But one question keeps coming up, and it is, does the city have jurisdiction? Can the city really impact some of the issues around housing or health? And if not, then are we spinning our wheels? And I said the overarching goal, from my opinion, is that we make recommendations and see what the city can do and move from that needle. But that was something I wanted to bring forth, because I think there's so many pieces to this puzzle that we're trying to impact that they feel like maybe we can't do it. And I guess I'm going to need more talking points to help them with that.
I think that Sister Teresa hit the nail on the head, and kind of touched on some really important issues, and you're touching on more in terms of some of this. We're going to push the envelope. We really don't know what can and what cannot be done, but we're going to make our best recommendation, the best that we can. Some of this is going to be a matter of trust. It's never been done like this, quite like this before. And the mayor has given us his affirmation, and he's going to do everything he can to take those recommendations and to put them into effect. So I think that's where we're going to have to learn to trust, and we're going to have to do some accountability. That's when we're going to put the recommendations together, but then we're going to be checking each year to see where we are. So it's going to be trust but verify.
Yes, and I shared the process, and I think that also validates the work that we're doing, because it's not a one-time, we're going to throw information out, we're going to make recommendations, and we're not going to move forward and check to see the progress. And so people are very encouraged, but recognize the weight of the work that we're trying to do.
Yeah, so Sister Judy, I think also one of the things I don't think we have really used yet as much as we should, that the Criminal Justice Committee made 4 or 5 suggestions right up front, right, and put them forward of what they thought we should do, what we could do, and the mayor's already done some of those. And I think that's a lot of encouragement right there. He's not waiting until we get our recommendations all together. He's not waiting until we come to the end, but he's already beginning to implement some of those recommendations. And that, I think that's powerful.
Absolutely. And actually, I hang our hat on those. And I share, especially because I'm on that committee, the work that we've been doing collectively. But it's about what we're looking at in regards to education and what we're looking at in regards to health and some of the other areas. They're like, can the city have that impact? And so, Tamika, I want you to continue to help us make sure we stay focused on where we can have the greatest impact from the city, and then how we can kind of have that effect to help move the needle in other places.
Thank you, Ms. Judy. My colleagues and I will do our best. It's a team effort.
Bishop Chair Ariel Hopkins has her hand raised as well.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Bishop. Quick question in terms of piggybacking off of Carla's thought about the budget. And as I look at just further refining and utilizing metrics for our outcomes, my question is there any way that we could advocate for maybe just $1 million out of each of the buckets from the American Rescue Act dollars to fund our subcommittee work? I don't know the ins and outs of the government funds, but being that disparities, racism, discrimination cuts across each one of those focus areas, it would feel a lot more, and as Judy was saying, I think it would give a lot more confidence, not only to us that are working very hard on this, but the community, that it's backed by actual funding. And I know we mentioned that some of the initiatives may be supported within some of the focus areas. However, it still seems like it's a process we're going to have to, not fight for the money, but I think being that this is a city sponsor and city initiative, and we put out the statement that it only kind of makes sense to allocate funding for the work to be implemented. Because my first thought was this racial justice should have been, or it could have been one of, the buckets, being that we're trying to address it within all of the sectors. So those are my comments.
So Ariel, once Katie sends out the document, you can see that every area actually hits on, it might not say it specifically, but every area that is funded or allocated funds towards actually is in line with the racial equity, social justice subcommittees. So, and then in line with that, one of the metrics is social and economic equity. Workforce development is one of the buckets. Public health, like just youth violence is a bucket. And I think that in terms of funding, I mean, you asked, can you get $1 million? Youth violence prevention is in your area, and that has an allocation of $15 to $20 million. So
thank you for letting me know. That helps
you
us.
can know tomorrow, but it's okay.
Thank you.
Workforce development, I don't know off the top of my hand what workforce development, but every bucket that was created, James Hardy and I and Annie and the mayor worked together. So I can assure you that equity will play an integral part in everything that is funded. I am at the table.
Thank you, Tamika.
You're welcome. I see some comments coming in below, Katie. So to talk about what has been implemented based off of recommendations from or suggestions from the task force, we have sent out press releases, and I think that Katie has and Mariah have sent them out. But for the one in particular is the actual police auditor, the independent police auditor. They created a job description for him, a process and procedures, because before the criminal justice subcommittee began to look at it, it was just, you know, I can't even describe it. It was business as usual. You get it if you can get it, and if you can't, then let's go ahead. So the next piece is that, for instance, this afternoon, a press release went out, and we've talked about the chiefs, the police chief. And so we are alerting everyone that you guys can have an opportunity to sit in on that town hall next week. I believe it's next Thursday, to meet the different candidates. And we do have Imokai Okolo and Bethane Scruggs, representatives from the task force, will be actually interacting with the candidates one-on-one to ask them different questions. So I think that's where we are in terms of true recommendations. And the other one, Brian Gage politely told me that we stole his idea. So the pay to stay and source of income legislation was something that the housing subcommittee was looking on, that we went ahead and after a long haul, 5 weeks, we implemented that. And so those are the suggestions, recommendations, things of equity that we moved ahead before the plan has come out.
I see that Tori Tolson has her hand up.
Go ahead, Tori.
Hello. So Bishop, my question is for you. One of our previous meetings not too long ago, you had let us know what the Colonel guy had to say about our first quarter reports. And we were going back to him for some clarification. And also, I don't believe we ever got really the final feedback from the executive committee. So I guess I'm a little concerned that from what's been presented so far, is there any feedback to make sure if everybody, they feel like everybody is going in the right direction, or has any of that been cross-referenced with the mayor or even Tamika's team to say, in addition to this, even though she's saying that all of the committees have the wherewithal to go in the direction they want to, maybe after reading all of that, there's also some feedback that they can give to say, in addition to that, maybe, committee X, Y, or Z should also look at this.
Tori, great question. Did you get the Colonel's report? Did you get that part? All right, can you hear me?
It looks like Tori might be frozen.
Okay. Hopefully she'll get back on. I want to see if she had that report. Number two, Brother Curtis, you were going to give some feedback. Were you able to do that?
I've had discussions with individual chairs. Yes.
Okay. Was Tori one of them?
No, she was not.
Bishop, I can speak very quickly to that. I was able to send the Colonel's comments on the workforce development.
And sorry, Bishop.
And Mark, I'm sorry, Tori.
Yeah, I'm sorry. My feed got kicked out, so I didn't hear anything the bishop said. But yes, I saw his initial comments about it, and then I think we had a discussion. Everybody was talking about and I think Carla had some comments. We were talking about some.
Yeah, Carla went back to him. Tori, you're kind of breaking up again.
She's freezing.
I know.
Yeah,
go ahead. It's recorded, so I'll go back to it.
Okay, good. Well, Carla did go and did interact with him. I'm not sure how much of that you want to share, Carla.
Well, I can say, because if you read that report, Tori, I don't know if you got a chance to see it or other committee members, he addressed each section. And so the part in the subcommittee, I talked to Bishop about that. And so I emailed Colonel Fosbrink back on behalf of the comments he made to the subcommittee, to the communications subcommittee. And he was very understanding and he appreciated it. He understood because I was asking for that clarity that I was asking in that meeting early on our chair and co-chair meeting. So it was helpful to him, but I would recommend, each subcommittee reach out to him and answer those questions. He was very grateful and said that he, was bringing his military background and just trying, looking at that report through that lens. And so it was nice to
Thank you. I think each person, that's a great suggestion that we each reach out to him. I think the other thing is our collective, I'm not sure if we've given a collective response yet, but I think Brother Curtis was touching some of that to some of you. He may not have gotten to all of you yet. Brother Curtis, where are you on that? Brother Curtis, did I lose you?
It'll be helpful to take myself off mute. My apologies. But I've spoken to everyone outside of workforce development, so I'll be sure to follow up after this call.
Good. And so good. You want to follow up with them, that'll be great.
Bishop Johnson, I am looking at all the responses that we got from executive committee members and all of the chairs and co-chairs. And only, of all the responses that we got, only 2 people provided any written recommendations via the Survey Monkey. So any other recommendations, any other responses from the executive committee, other than the 2 responses that we got, would have been emailed to the chairpersons. So that's the totality of the feedback that we have. The other questions were just whether or not the subcommittees appeared to have sufficient data. But the other feedback was just very low response rate.
So what Sister Katie is saying is that we sent out a Survey Monkey. We wanted the committee, all of the committee, to respond so that we could give additional feedback. We didn't get much, so we didn't have much to report back. But we'll do it again and give you another opportunity so that we can provide some more feedback to where you are at this particular point.
Hey, Bishop.
Yep.
I'd like to share Jose Delgado is unable. He's in a place where it's rather loud, so he typed his question and his thought into the chat. But one of recommendations, so I'm speaking for Jose and for our communication subcommittee. One recommendation in our subcommittee was to implement some type of a charter with the city or community leadership. The goal is to create a sustainable and scalable task force that would exist beyond the administrations. I think he was trying to say generational, reflecting the task force needs of Akron. And he asked for thoughts. Basically, I'll paraphrase it. What we've been talking about when Jose is talking about what happens if this administration changes? What happens if another administration comes in? So one of our recommendations is to either have some type of a charter amendment or some type of agreement or something in place that would ensure that this task force and the recommendations have some longevity.
So, Ms. Carla, what I could say is that in the beginning, Mayor Horgan wanted to make sure that this did not go to the wayside if he or I was run over by a bus. Okay. I know that's just as crass as he was like, Tamika, if we go, I want this to continue to run. So we do have it in legislation, but we did not continue it. We wanted to see what the community wanted. We did not want to put anything on the community, right? So I think that is a very good recommendation to have it in the ordinance, to have it in the law. If you want, I mean, I think that that is something that we would be amenable to looking forward to going forward. I think it might be well received if you kind of like say how many members you want on there. Do we need this many members next time? How many members do you want on that racial equity, social justice task force going forward in perpetuity? How do you want that to look? I think that would be
okay. Yeah, sorry, Tamika. I broke up a little bit. I didn't mean to talk over you. Thank you. I do appreciate that. And I think more so the recommendations to be in place, all of the plan. If everybody disappears in the next couple of years, if administration changes, because this is a 5-year plan and it's going to start in 2022, right? So, what happens in 2026 if other people are in place? So maybe not so much the size or the scope of the task force itself, but to make sure that the plan has some longevity. So I like what you're saying. Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm sure Jose, yep, he just said he likes it too. Thank you.
Great. I think it's a great recommendation. All right. Well, it's been about an hour tonight. Y'all were talkative. I mean, we usually y'all just sit and listen. There was some great talking tonight. We'll work on these. We'll attempt to continue to move forward at the speed of trust and continue to work for our community. Thank you for your work. Thank you for all that you've done. And if you have additional questions, additional comments, we are always open. And if we can help you with anything that you're working on, we're open to do that. Tamika, Mariah, Katie, anything final?
Thank you all for your time and your hard work.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tamika.
Appreciate all the input. Thank you,
Brother
everybody.
Curtis, anything else?
I don't have anything else.
Right.
No. Thank you.
Okay, great. Have a good evening, everybody.
You too.
Good night.